Hi everyone, welcome to Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. I'm your host, Dr. Saksham Sharda. I'm the creative director at outgrow.co, and for this month, we are going to interview Dan Martell, who's the founder at SaaS Academy. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
I'm excited. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, so we're going to start with a rapid fire round just to break the ice. You get three passes. In case you don't want to answer the question, you can just say pass. But try to keep your answers to one word or one sentence only, okay?
Yep.
All right, so the first question: how long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
3 minutes.
Okay, most embarrassing moment of your life?
Um, I spilt, one word. I spilled food on myself before I went on stage and I had it all over my shirt.
Okay, one word or one sentence. Okay, that was good. How many hours of sleep can you survive on?
4.
Okay. Fill in the blank. An upcoming marketing trend is blank.
TikTok.
Okay. The city in which the best kiss of your life happened.
Toronto.
Okay. Pick one, Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey.
They're both boners. I can't. I'm not.
Brilliant answer. The first movie that comes to your mind when I say the word ambition.
Gladiator.
All right. Why did you last cry? Oh, sorry. When did you last cry?
Watching Driven to Succeed, the F1 Netflix, when it was called Man on Fire, the episode.
Okay. The biggest mistake of your career.
Selling my company, Spheric Technologies.
Okay. How do you relax?
Snowboarding.
Okay. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
A hell of a lot. Too many. Like a lot.
Okay. All right. A habit of yours that you really hate.
I rarely hate.
Really, really hate.
Oh,
A
the amount
habit
of
of yours
coffee I
that you.
drink is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. The most valuable skill you've learned in life.
How to connect with people.
hmm And finally, the last question: your favorite Netflix show.
Favorite Netflix show. It's not on Netflix, but it is. Okay. Hero Dreams of Sushi. If you made me pick a movie, that's a good.
Oh yeah, oh my god, yeah. I've seen that one. Yeah. All right, well that was the end of the rapid fire round. You didn't use any passes, so you scored 10 on 10, but you
Yeah,
did take a little long to answer the last question, so maybe 9 on 10.
9.5. I'm competitive.
All right. You're good at bargaining. All right, 9.5 it is. All right, so the bigger questions. The first one is, you're a five-time founder. Tell us a little bit about your experience being a five-time founder.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a really tough environment. I ended up in and out of jail as a teenager. Rehab saved my life at 17. Learned how to code by discovering this book on Java programming in rehab, of all places. And then had two failed technology companies right out of the gate. And lucky that I just started young at 17. And then at 24, I thought to myself I should probably learn about this business world, and I started reading books and got a mentor, a coach, a guy named Bob. He was an E-Myth certified coach, and I think the theme in my life is 1% better. So, as a software developer, as an engineering mind kind of guy, I'm very much a process person. I think that speaks to me. Designing the game to never have to not be played. I never want to stop playing this game of
Hmm.
growth. Realizing that we all die, that none of this is permanent. So, it's kind of like Gandhi said, learn like you'll live forever and live like you'll die tomorrow. But that's like, I mean, those are some big ideas encompassing the last 5 years. But, I've just feel incredibly lucky from coming a place where I was in a hole and depressed and addicted to drugs to now being a multimillionaire, running multiple companies. I've invested in 40 plus companies. Four of them are billion-dollar companies. I run the largest training and coaching company in the world. I buy software companies. So I have a High Speed Ventures, which is my own capital, kind of like a family office. I don't know. I'm and I think I'm a really good marketer. So it's kind of fun. But these are just areas of my life I've decided to invest in, and the through line out of all of it is I'm willing to work, put in the time to get to learn a new level of skills and mindsets and beliefs that are going to help me add as much value as I can to the people I care about the most.
That's interesting. There's a lot to unpack there. I like your gaming metaphor because that's how I also feel the entire startup world works with, like, venture capitalists on one side, these innovators on the other side. I think it's like a huge game. And I think if someone takes it too seriously, then you end up losing it. So what do you think about, like, how gamified is the startup world? Because, the chances of success of a startup actually becoming a big company are very low. So how serious does one have to be about a particular thing that they're starting?
Yeah, I think you need to be obsessed. So it's kind of like what I call blissfully dissatisfied, right? In one
Mm,
breath, I'm going to say you need to be obsessed at a level 9 or 10. And 10 is a crack addict or an alcoholic waking up in the morning with no resources, no money, no know-how, and by 3 or 4 p.m. in the afternoon they're high, right? Like that level of obsession, even though most of it they might do things that are illegal to accomplish that, that's the level of
mm,
drive that's required to succeed in the startup tech game. That being
mm,
said, you also need to pair that with the idea that success or failure has nothing to do with who you are fundamentally as a person. And I think that there's a difference between what I call the science of achievement, right? So in business, there is a science to business. It is a discipline. You study it, there's books on it, there's principles, there's best practices, etc. So just like getting healthy, anybody could follow a protocol and do the work and get healthy. But a lot of people, have a hard time in the business, but some people are really successful in business. And then there's the art
mm,
of fulfillment. And the art of fulfillment is the blissfully part, right? So blissfully grateful for the moment you have. And in some ways I call it trading your and I got this from Tony Robbins of all people, but he said this once, it really
mm,
resonated with me, which was trade your expectation for appreciation. Right. So even in failure,
mm,
if you're hard on yourself, it's because you had expectations around what you were hoping to accomplish. But if you can actually look back and appreciate what it was and what you learned, then that'll help you bring a certain energy to the next project. And if you use that as a loop, right, then you create a game that never has to not be played or stop being played, or um, that hopefully the more successful you are, the harder you're going to want to work. And I think that's another area. When I said I sold my company as like my biggest failure, I think that's what I
mm,
thought that was the dream: is you build a company, you sell it, and you live free for the rest of your life
mm,
off the money. It turns out that humans have a need to contribute to feel fulfilled, and just because you
mm,
don't have to work doesn't mean you're going to be happy. It's like my kids, right? Somebody said, well, as long as they're happy. My kid would be happy eating Haagen-Dazs playing Fortnite. I don't want my kid to be
mm,
happy. I want my kid to feel fulfilled. I want them to learn to do hard things. I want them to create their future. I'm not, the word happy, I have an issue with, but there's a lot of
mm.
different places we can go with this conversation, but that's at a
For
high
sure.
level the way I think about it.
It's because we had Rand Fishkin on this podcast the other day, and he too said the biggest mistake of his life was selling Moz or stepping down from being the CEO of Moz. I understand that, but there's also something I want to connect this to. Is something you said earlier in this answer, where you said you were making the metaphor, the simile with the drug deal, and you said things would have to be done illegally. And when you look at all these movies like The Social Network, these founder movies about Steve Jobs and everyone, a lot of things about building the company that they've built were done illegally, or it's like a hustle. So, what do you think? Is it so hard for a startup to just honestly make it to the very top in a world like ours, which is dominated by monopolies? Is it necessary that they have to hustle? Is that the only way that a startup can actually get there?
We have to define hustle, but
Mm-hmm.
let's not use the word hustle because I'm not sure if we'd be talking about the same thing. But let's just think about like following the letter of the law. Okay. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that if every company followed the letter of the law, there would be no businesses that look like successful. Here's what I mean by that. Most companies are starting off with employment laws being broken right out of the gate. Okay. So like we could just start with that. Uber was breaking employment laws. A lot of innovation requires you to challenge the status quo. Is it illegal if Zappos takes an order for a pair of shoes on the internet and then runs down the street, buys the shoes, and ship them to the customer? Is that okay? And I think that's 100%, and then we can have this whole philosophical debate around what is good and bad because it's subjective to the individual, right? So that's fascinating in itself. So I would say I think you have to you need to have ethics, right? You need to look at the greater reason why you're doing stuff. And I'm all for competition, but I'm not for breaking the law per se. I think there's this gray zone, right? So for example, the other day I was parked illegally doing a Facebook live because the park that I was parked in was closed, but I parked there anyways. Okay. So technically I was
Mm-hmm.
breaking the bylaws of the city. But the reason I pulled over is because I had something on my heart that I wanted to share that I thought could serve some people.
Yeah.
So should I have not stopped? I don't know. I know what I did. I decided to give, and I was okay willing to pay a fine if that's what
Mm.
was required. So I don't know. I just think that it's a bigger question. I think the tenacity and creativity and resourcefulness needs to be there. And I know too many entrepreneurs that are playing delicately in a full contact sport, and it just doesn't work. You can't expect to compete against other people if you're not going to really dig in and be creative. I'm not saying break the law. I'm saying understand when you can bend the rules.
Mm. It's funny because you mentioned the example of Uber earlier, and in the case of Uber, now Uber has to treat their workers in London, for instance, in the UK, they have to give them the minimal wage. Like that's a law that London has passed. So I think maybe it's more a struggle between, how much younger companies can bend the law versus how much the system can keep the laws in place until the laws become outdated. Do you think that's a kind of a
Well,
tussle as
I
well?
mean, that's why it's not black and white. It's just like Airbnb.
Hmm.
A lot of the Airbnb
Yeah.
hosts are breaking the law by allowing people to rent in their neighborhood where they might have bylaws or stratas or HOAs that don't allow it. But it created a competitive solution that the hotels didn't like because the hotels are used
Hmm.
to making their incredible margins and they didn't want to distribute the wealth down to a broader population of people, right? And I think it's one of those things where as the world evolves, as our understanding of the economy evolves, that we need these disruptive companies to come in, and sometimes they're being aggressive or they're in this gray zone of like, well, it's not written like that, but you could take it that way, but we're going to push it.
Hmm.
And they have to be able to do that so that it creates this conversation around what is. So, like in London, like you said, they chose to go that route.
Hmm.
Maybe in the US, they go a different route, and that's okay. But for an individual to not innovate because they can't afford to pay the employment tax to create the prototype to get some traction to raise investors, I think that's risky, right? Should you
Hmm.
go and hack into somebody's servers to download their customer files to do a cold outbound email campaign?
Oh, for
No.
sure. Hmm. Yeah, that's illegal. Yeah, that's clearly, yeah. So there are certain things that are
Well,
black or
that's
white,
illegal. But
but
what
yeah.
about when Uber decides to buy burner phones, install their competitor's app, and then overwhelm their network to try to create a bad quality of service?
Well, isn't there like a famous thing? I don't remember who. I think it's Chomsky who comes up with the quote that when the emperor does something illegal, it is legal, but if a pirate does it, it's illegal. So it
There
depends on
you
how much
go.
money you have
Isn't that
and where you.
fascinating? Yeah.
I think it's in a book called Emperors and Pirates. But yeah, okay. Okay, so the next question is, with so many SaaS players in the market, do you think the industry is getting saturated, or do you think it's always been saturated, but we're just looking at it as saturated now in the moment?
Um, I think there's certain categories that are very saturated. Obviously, Martech, marketing technology. Um,
Hmm.
but the reality of it is there's so many workflows to this day in various different industries that are continued to be done manually or through a spreadsheet, right? So the way I think about it is SaaS is always going to be the picks and forks of things that create the workflow or the data analysis or the notifications or the report, whatever it is around the thing, right? And point solutions will always be built to address a market. So, when we have these industries that are popping up that are going to be, game changers in nature, like artificial intelligence and self-driving cars and drone technologies and 3D printers and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, all of these, massive multi-billion dollar new industries are going to require a set of tooling, and that's going to come from software. So SaaS is really just the subscription component, but at the end of the day, it's software. I don't think, and Mark Andreessen said the software is eating the world. I don't think its appetite is letting up. And, we've been 40% annual growth rates. I don't think that's going to slow down for a while. But I do think certain industries that are, real estate technology. Funny enough, if you don't know, like real estate prop tech is incredibly competitive and saturated. It's also, I don't know, probably like a 50 billion a year market that, some really great 25, 50 million a year SaaS companies can be built off of. And then there's all these other still very specific niches. Like, man, I have one of my clients, they have Yeti. Now, I don't know how they get away with that trademark, but they do management for snow removal companies, right? So they're a platform for snow removal.
Hmm.
Like there's all these very, dance studios. And one of my other clients I coach, Nama Stream, they do it for yoga studios. So there's like all these like point solutions for these different industries, forestry, you know what I mean? Or, resale loop in the consignment, kind of the old school closed consignment space for retail. I mean, there's just so much opportunity still to do that. Yeah, I don't think it's saturated
Hmm.
except for certain industries.
And you don't think that a monopoly, which it's not yet, but you don't think there's going to be a HubSpot like software monopoly that can serve all these different industries and you don't need competition? Like, a software that actually can, do something for the yoga industry and the forestry industry, and both of these people can use it. And instead of there being like, particular services.
Yeah, no, I think what if I see like the trend, right? There's kind of like
Mm.
these infrastructure pieces like a NetSuite or Zero or Salesforce, or let's call it HubSpot. But the truth is, different solutions are going to serve different layers of the market, right? So you have your SMB, mid market, and enterprise, but that's simplistically explained. Within those, there's just so many different tranches, right? Of, franchises and like, private equity backed versus sole proprietary. Like in each one of those categories of an industry, they might have a different propensity of features and price points that they're willing to pay, that somebody could have that slice of that market, right? So like HubSpot can exist, Salesforce can exist. Now, back in the day, it used to be Oracle, it used to be BEA, it used to be Microsoft, right? And I think what's
Mm.
happening is these upstarts, because of the infrastructure, the Amazon, the Stripes, the programming DevOps infrastructure, it's allowing just it's almost like the long tail to be even longer for these companies to
Mm.
build traction, to start pulling away market share from some of the incumbents. I don't think that's going to stop. And I don't think now, what's interesting is, when you look at AI requires a large data set for it to be trained properly to do something interesting. And the reality of that, unless somebody comes out with an AI data marketplace, which there are that are coming online, is those are typically reserved for a handful of big companies, the Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Tesla, right? So I think that would be concerning, but because I see the marketplace, the data store marketplaces popping up, I think that'll be a solved problem. Even AI as a service and a knowledge area is becoming democratized and more approachable. So yeah, I'm not seeing any consolidation challenges. What Apple's doing to Google right now is really cool, and Facebook. I think that's important. Um,
Oh yeah.
there's a lot of concentration, I think, on phones. Competition is just really important. Like I really don't think the laws, like the fact that Google still has so much market share for their search engine is pretty fascinating.
Hmm. Interesting. And do you think with AI, just to echo popular media, but also TechCrunch and Wired, they all speak about how China is at the leading edge of AI? And you also did mention TikTok is an upcoming marketing trend, which is also a Chinese company. Do you think we are seeing a shift of the entire, I don't know, the competitive sphere to the east?
I think that's been happening for 20 years
Hmm.
now.
Okay. Where are we now then?
Yeah, that's the thing is, can, let's call it, North American companies leverage that talent? That's interesting, right? And I think some companies like Zoom seem to be able to do that. But it's a concern as well. My concern is the way trade works, right? We're technically North America. I'm Canadian, spent a lot of time in the US. Um, we're open to trade. We're open to export. We're open to having people come in and the investor visas, et cetera. But it seems when we go the other way, that's not the case, right? And we have to partner
Hmm.
with the local. We need to do all this government stuff, et cetera. And it's just nearly impossible. So I think that needs to be addressed to alleviate my concern, which is true that Chinese type countries are amassing such a knowledge bank of talent that's
Hmm.
technically funded and supported by North American companies or first world countries.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's a big concern. So what do you think is going to be, say, 10 years from now? Like, what is going to happen? Like, is the US going to get more competitive in that sense? Or are we looking
I'll
at
tell you
Europe
what's
getting more
fascinating.
competitive?
I don't know. I
Yeah.
honestly, I'm not political in nature, but I tell you, like, what would be fascinating. One thing that
Hmm.
I, because I got into cryptocurrency in 2012, bought an ATM machine in 2013. I've been doing it for a long time, and I honestly don't talk a lot about it on social media, but it
Hmm.
is a part of my portfolio. And what I was fascinated about when I went down that rabbit hole is the concept of people. Right now, our alignment of values is geographically based, right? Like where you physically live
Hmm.
kind of sets the tone for the values that you care about and for the ecosystem that you operate within, right? The rules, the government, the social aspects, the politics, all that. So like it's geographically there's borders, and with cryptocurrency and the idea of different coins is you can start to create a world potentially where the currency and the values of the currency is designed into it starts to almost act like a social network in the sense that if it's aligned with your values you're going to use that currency, right? And
Hmm.
I think that's fascinating. That's like, where's the world going to go? I don't know per se. I've got some thoughts,
Hmm.
but man, wouldn't it be cool if it wasn't about being Canadian or American or Chinese or whatever, and instead
Hmm.
you adopted the currency that most aligned with the way you want to show up in the world, and then that currency's ability to pull people into adopting those beliefs sets the value of that currency. So all of a sudden we have this like global democracy based on the trade and them deciding to participate in that currency's trading, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
I think that's a neat idea.
For sure. I think Naval was saying it on, I think, Joe Rogan's podcast as well, that cryptocurrency is the inheritor of the Western tradition, because like whatever happens in the West, it is this that will actually survive on and actually create a more equitable world, because no one actually controls it in a sense. And have you heard of BitClout?
Yeah, I'm on
I,
Big Cloud.
I guess
Yeah,
you are on BitClout.
yeah. Um,
So yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, it's all early days. Like, dude, I've been like Naval and I are friends. I mean, he was one of my early mentors when it came to angel investing. So all my investment, like I lost money. All my money I lost was the pre-Naval meeting in 2009. And then Naval's like, here's the way you should think about angel investing. Um,
Hmm.
but the way I've seen it, because I've been doing this for so long, like 20 some years, is I like to be early, but I don't waste my time with early. Okay. So I thought I wasn't too early in 2012, 2013 in the crypto space, and I was, right? And
For sure.
and that's cool, but I made my bets and they're doing well now, obviously. Um,
Hmm.
and I've been waiting for the killer app. I've been waiting for the spreadsheet, the personal computer to show up for, and I'm starting to see that with NFTs, with obviously big
Hmm.
cloud type concepts, smart contracts that are being used in real world activities. I think it's interesting, but I that's the reality. That is probably going to be more of a um, influencer of where the world's going than a lot of other things. And if I were to try, if I wanted to understand where the world's going, I definitely would spend more time in that, more than
Hmm.
politics, because I think, man, if you can decentralize a lot of the buying power and influence,
Hmm.
then it gets interesting. Right now,
For
it's
sure.
concentrated.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to go on to the last question because we're running out of time, and it's a very typical question, but it is. Is there something you wish you would have done differently in your life? Or actually, let me rephrase that. Is there anything else you would be doing today if not this? Like, if not this, what else would you be doing today? Like,
I'd be building companies. If I wasn't building software companies, I would probably be like an architect. Like I just like to create,
hmm,
you know.
okay.
Yeah, I like to build stuff. And
Or to derive value by contributing
yeah, and,
in
and the
some
thing
way
that,
to
that
society,
drives
as
it,
you
yeah,
said.
my
Hmm.
North Star metric is people. So like every day I wake up
Uh,
and I kind of think about like build the empire, build the army, build the empire, build the army. Like the more value I can create, the more people I can bring into my world, the more people I can push, coach, cajole, grow,
hmm,
influence. Then it's kind of this referential kind of snowball, this flywheel. And so to my true north is the amount of people I worked with. That's my immediate focus. These people, they take priority because I know that the amount of value that the world will receive by me working through those people to develop them is going to be disproportionate than anything else I can do on social media. But then those people help me create a bigger audience on the social media side. It's why I do podcasts and interviews. Um, but the truth is like, as Chamath says, like, go get the money. The
hmm.
money will give you influence. The influence will give you the ability to change things. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. They think money's evil, and it's not. It's like saying a fork is evil. Like a fork is a fork. It's a tool. You can use
For
it to
sure.
feed
Chamath
yourself,
is
or you
also,
can use
yeah.
it to stab somebody. But it's a tool.
I was going to say Chamath is also on BitClout. So
Well, he
I
was
was
one
going
of
to
the top
say, and
investors. So I mean,
oh,
who's
okay.
that?
So where do you get your, okay, one last bonus question. Where do you get your daily dose of news from? Like, are there
I don't.
particular
I don't.
newsletters you follow?
I don't consume news. I think news will rot your brain. I think it's like sugar.
Okay.
I
Okay.
consume books, a lot of books, a lot of reading,
Hmm.
YouTube interviews. I study billionaires and
Hmm.
talking to individuals that are way smarter than me.
Okay. All right. That's actually a good to-do list for everyone who's listening. All right. Well, that's the end of the interview. Thanks everyone for joining us for this month's episode of Outgrow's Market of the Month. That was Dan Martell, who is the founder at SaaS Academy. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Appreciate it. You guys have an amazing day. Thanks so much.
All right. See you.
All right.